Black males need to know they need to get their prostate
No matter
checked.
what, anybody that you care about, that you love, it ain't about you right now, it's about them.
I'm not ready to get the exam.
They're really selfish.
Do you know where your prostate is?
People often talk about making a difference, but what does that really mean? I never gave it much thought. I try and live my life in a positive way, provide for my family, enjoy spending time with my friends. If I have a friend or family member in need, I try and support them as best I can. But is that really making a difference? They say a movement starts with one. As I begin this journey, I pray they're right.
I actually heard something interesting. I don't know if it's true or not, but if a man lives long enough, eventually they'll have an issue with their prostate. So it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when.
Every year, more than 34,000 men die from prostate cancer, and 1 in 8 American men are diagnosed. In Black men, that number jumps to 1 in 6.
How old were you when you...
46 when I was diagnosed. 46. And it was already spread, already advanced, and inoperable. And had I gone in and gotten tested 6 or 7 years earlier, probably none of this would have happened. Yeah, I got elected as a judge back in 2003, and I had been going through a whole lot of political action, activist work, demonstrations, political demonstrations, campaign drives, voter registration drives, and through the course of all of that, as well as some lawsuits I had filed, federal lawsuits and state lawsuits against the local school districts on behalf of the Black community, I created quite a following of people who wanted to take me down. Never thought in my wildest dreams that this stuff really happened, but it turned out, unbeknownst to me, there was a 3-year criminal investigation being conducted by the local authorities as well as the FBI, and I was arrested on July the 9th, 2009, and charged with conspiracy to accept a bribe and federal programs fraud, and so I was stressed out. You know, I had to post a $100,000 bond, was facing 15 years in the federal penitentiary, all on something that I had no idea what came about until I was in the interrogation room and they showed me video documentation of what they were accusing me of. And so I came home, I wasn't sleeping, couldn't sleep, was stressed out. And that's when you need to have had a really good diet. And so my whole chemistry was off. I was stressed out, just bad, really bad. And so it was through those criminal charges that I felt I had heard about people who had had heart attacks because of the stress, and I felt I should go and get a checkup. And I was getting a checkup for my heart condition, for a heart, to make sure that my heart wasn't stressed. And I just got a PSA test since I was in there and hadn't been to the doctor in 10 years, so figured I might as well go ahead and do that too. My father was diagnosed back in 2000, and I was living in Austin, and I really didn't get that involved. I was always busy, never had time, and in fact, I didn't even come home for his surgery, which I regretted, but he had surgery. He was in hospital for 3 days. I never could make it, and as a result, I didn't take it serious, and so he had battled prostate cancer, and even knowing that, I still did not go get tested.
He's been an advocate for things that were not directly involved with him, and he's a good person. And you know, you want good things to happen to good people. And when bad things happen to good people, it's not nice. But at the same time, the guy has a positive outlook. He says the stress that brought the stress of that incident and that event probably is what made him aware of his cancer. So it's just very interesting.
Dr. Frenchen, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so
I was born and raised in Detroit, son of a doctor who practiced on the east side of Detroit, his old neighborhood that he grew up in.
Detroit, Detroit.
Yeah, the D.
The D.
Exactly. And from there, I went to University of Michigan, where I was pre-med, but I also studied sociology and health disparities. So understanding the differences and the health outcomes of African Americans and minorities versus whites. And that kind of inspired me to go into urology, where I focused most of my work on men's health and prostate cancer, and focusing on community-based research, trying to figure out ways to improve access to care.
Let me ask you a question. So you found earlier on that there actually is a difference depending on if you're a white person or if you're a person of color when it comes to diseases, when it comes to the symptoms or what? Just in general, there are a lot of differences?
Yeah, so in fact, there are differences across a number of diseases, including prostate cancer, with respect to who dies of the disease, at what rates, and who's diagnosed. And so if you think about prostate cancer, for instance, Black men die at higher rates of the disease and are diagnosed at higher rates of the disease than any other racial or ethnic group in the world.
At what age do you think a person should get a prostate exam?
Yeah, so for most men, we've actually started to change those guidelines over the years. And for many men, they may be confused as a result. So in general, men need to be screened at 55 now. So between the ages of 55 and 69, most men will need to be screened or offered a PSA test, which is a screening test or a test to identify men who are at risk for prostate cancer. Now, that being said, that's all men. And as I told you already, for many men who are African American, they're at higher risk of prostate cancer. And so for those men who are at higher risk for prostate cancer, so those men include men who are African American or men with a family history of prostate cancer, they need to be screened at earlier ages. And that age is typically 40.
40. Mm-hmm. So 10 to 15 years before the general population.
And there's a good reason for that. The reason being is that when you look at African American men, not only are they diagnosed with prostate cancer more often, and not only do they die more often, they also are diagnosed at younger ages and with more aggressive forms of disease. And so the importance of us potentially curing men of prostate cancer who are African American is that we identify it early and at a point where it has not spread beyond the prostate so that we can treat it.
Well, first of all, I found out from my doctor, because I go every year and have an annual physical, and with Dr. Charles Weatherby, and who I've known Charles since we were children.
Pretty good. Now, how about yourself?
Real good, feeling good.
You know, last year we did our physical, and usually at the physical we do certain things for preventive care.
Right.
And part of that process was your lab work to look for different diseases.
Right.
And one was the PSA for prostate cancer.
Right.
And yours came back.
But this time he felt that I was a little swollen in there when he checked.
So we followed up with further evaluation. Okay. And now we determined that you saw Dr. Kim, did a biopsy,
right,
and determined that now you have prostate cancer, but early stage.
Right.
How you feel about that?
Well, at first I was shocked. I was like, "You're not talking to me."
Tell us a little bit about the process for screening for prostate cancer.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of already alluded to the fact that there's a blood test. That blood test is the PSA to which I referred to. PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen. A PSA test is a blood test that we can use to potentially find men who are at risk for prostate cancer. It doesn't tell us if you have it or not, but for those men who have an elevated PSA, so that would be a PSA that has a value above 4, for those men, we consider them at risk for prostate cancer. The other thing that we can do for men to help identify prostate cancer is called the digital rectal exam. Now, that's the finger wave, as some men might call it.
Yes, the old finger wave.
Exactly. And so, I come in, I tell men, I have to do this exam. No man is comfortable having it done I
It's more
apologize.
painful for you than it is for me.
Exactly. I apologize. I have large hands. I tell them all that ahead of time, but by definition, it'll just be a few seconds of discomfort that may save your life.
I was about to show you a prostate model. Maybe that will explain a little bit better about the rectal exam and about how the prostate cancer progresses. So this is the rectum down here. Mm-hmm. This is the bladder up there. And that's the prostate right below the bladder. So when the doctor puts his one finger through the rectum, he can only feel the back side of the prostate gland. He cannot feel the front. So the PSA blood test is particularly important because if you depend on the rectal only, you will never know that there was something in front. So having said that, this is the first model that shows you two little red spots inside the prostate. This is a very small prostate cancer just starting. If somebody wants to treat this, they can just take away the entire prostate gland and everything will be fine. This type of cancer, you cannot feel it on a rectal exam because it does not infringe on the rectum. Look at the second one. You can see that the little prostate gland appears, the prostate cancer is situated closer to the edge of the gland. This one can be felt. Even though these two cancers are the same size, this one can be felt, this one cannot be felt on the rectal exam. But both of them are small cancers, and if you sort of take away the prostate gland, you might be able to be curing the cancer. Then look at the third one. That little red thing is quite big there now. It's encroaching on surrounding tissue. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to remove the cancer, you will be sort of touching some of the surrounding tissues, particularly the nerves that are associated with erectile dysfunction and stuff like that. And so most of the time, the doctor will say they don't want to do surgery because of the size of the cancer, and they would rather just do radiation. So thinking about how to treat the cancer might depend on where the cancer is, the size of the cancer, whether it has encroached on surrounding tissues. And of course, look at the last one. The cancer has progressed so much. It is so big. There's this big cancer already protruding into the blood and so on. This has gone way too far. There's no one that can do any surgery at this stage. They can only just do the hormone treatment. So, and progressing from this to that can take years.
But when he told me, it was like, you're talking to me. This is not real. I said, I feel great. He said, I know. He says, but you have first stage of prostate cancer. And when I got that, I was like, wow. Here I've always been the one that's helping all my relatives and whatnot who've had cancer and other things, but all three of my parents died of cancer. And I said, and now I have it. And I'm like, are you serious? I said, wait a minute. I said, really? That is what it showed. He says, yeah, you're in the first stage. I says, okay. All right. First stage. Now tell me, what does that exactly mean and what's our next step? When I got off the phone, I was like, wow. It was really hard to believe that I had that.
Surreal, huh?
Yeah, it was very surreal. And then for me, because my life is pretty active, I started thinking about all the things that I have done.
And that you want to do.
And then I started thinking about my bucket list that I have of things I want to do. And the things, I started thinking about, well, the life I wanted to spend more with my kids, with my wife. And then we went on the internet, and then with a vengeance, we were going through everything. And then I called the kids and told them. My daughter, I called, she was like, really surprised, and here she is doing this documentary, and I was like, how ironic is this?
How was that telling your kids about it?
Well, it was, I wanted them to know exactly, as far as how I felt, I felt that they need to know in case Because in my research, I found that African Americans, cancer runs rampant through us pretty quickly, not knowing, even if it's first stage, what does that mean to me? You know, everybody, it attacks everybody's differently, and cancer is a very stealth disease. So I'm thinking, well, kids need to, all 5 kids need to know what's going on and what the possibilities are. And nothing can be sugar-coated. I've never been that kind of person anyway. You know, I want them to know that it could go either way. Even though they say it's first, you know, it's just the first stage. And I felt I was very blessed that that's all it is, or is the first stage. 1 dot pinpoint of cancer on 1 of 18 strands, which possibly could be, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, that was 18 taking out of what area? Is there more in that 1 dot? Was that 1 dot of another or more that you only caught the tip of? You know, how do I know? I'm not a doctor, but that's what ran through my mind. So I said, I need to do whatever I need to do to make it right.
I mean, that's being real. That's keeping it, as they say, keeping it 100. And I would hope that if I were in that position, that I would have, that I would be able to handle it as well as he did, and as succinct a manner as he did, and be able to be as positive and just real as he was and as he's being.
Prostate cancer is a silent disease. You don't know you have it. You have no symptoms. There's nothing wrong with you. You're running around happy. The only time you're going to have problem is when it metastasizes. Or better still, first and foremost, when it begins to encroach on local organs near the prostate. So before then, you'll be well. And prostate cancer is a slow-growing cancer. It may take 10, 15 years to become, to begin to affect you. So you're happy, you're living your life, and somebody comes and takes your blood test and does a single rectal exam and tells you that it looks as if you need a biopsy. And they do a biopsy and they say, sorry, it looks as if you have cancer. You would think that their examining you cost it because you were happy until the day they did that.
Do you guys take physicals every year?
I do now. Yeah.
Regular physicals every year?
I have to.
All of you?
Yeah, we have to.
Always. As well?
I don't take them that regularly, to be honest with you.
You don't?
I don't.
And why is that?
I think probably because of I'm not really probably as confident with the industry, medical industry in general.
And do you get an exam every year?
No, I don't. But I got a full exam. I don't know. I don't think I got that when she passed. So that year when I was at UPS, I just got the whole blood work, everything, just and whatever. But I don't.
2005.
2005 and 2006 between that year.
Okay, between that year. Yeah. And you haven't had a physical exam, an annual physical exam since then?
No.
Okay, we got work on this, brother. Here.
I'm sure it's not.
But let's go into that a little bit. Why don't you trust your doctor?
Well, basically, most of the time the doctors just want to get many patients they can in and out, get the copay, get their money, go play golf, go do what they do. I see them do it. I got friends that's prominent, and that's what they talk about. They don't have that many general practitioners anymore because they don't care about the people like they used to old day. Now, some still do, but you got to find an old school doctor or somebody that has compassion for people of different cultures. Because if you're not in my culture, I'm not going to really research you 100% unless your money is long.
That lack of trust, I think, comes from centuries of neglect and distrust. I mean, even in the Tuskegee experiment, that's recent. We're talking modern history here, and a university would use people, black men in particular, to do experiments on sexually transmitted diseases, and not tell them this. The whole experiment was that we're gonna treat these guys, tell them they're being treated and not treated, treat these STDs, and just to see what happens. That experiment probably did more harm and more lasting harm than we realize in our community.
From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service sponsored an observational study of syphilis in black men in Macon County, Alabama. This trial has come to be known as the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. 600 black men, 399 with syphilis and 201 without, were observed for 40 years to chart the effects of untreated syphilis. Penicillin was discovered as an effective medication for syphilis in 1947. Despite this discovery, researchers refused to administer it to the participants and continued the study, denying the men treatment. Numerous men died from the disease. 40 women contracted it from their husbands, and 19 children were born with congenital syphilis. In 1974, over $9 million and lifetime health care were awarded to the surviving participants and their descendants by the U.S. government.
To the survivors, to the wives and family members, the children and the grandchildren, I say what you know. No power on earth can give you back the lives lost, the pain suffered, the years of internal torment and anguish. What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence. We can stop turning our heads away. We can look at you in the eye and finally say, on behalf of the American people, what the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry.
A memorial was raised for the victims of the study at Tuskegee University, but the mistrust of healthcare providers continues today.
I believe there are conspiracies. That's the truth. I mean, I think that the industry does create problems. Not that these problems don't exist, but they offer the solution for you.
I have not had any distrust in doctors. Maybe that's because I do a lot of research prior to whatever. We're dealing with parents and, because I've always, or my brother, we've always had to be the ones to make sure everything was really right. And if it even remotely seems wrong, if a doctor's speaking what I call 10 miles over my head, I make he or she to break it down so I really understand it to the point of drawing diagrams to explain it to me in a class setting if it needs to be, so I'm perfectly clear. It's like this. A lot of people communicate and very few people connect. We must connect on all levels, especially when you're talking about my life. And if you can't do that, then we have a problem.
Maybe the thing to do is to, if you don't trust doctors in general, is to find a doctor that you do trust. I remember I'm 54, and I didn't have it until I was 50. I thought 50 is a good age. I'll have it. My father passed away when I was 21, so I'm figuring stuff out as I go along, kind of thing. And I remember I've always had a female doctor for like the last 15 years, and when I turned 50, I thought she had said you should probably get this exam. And it was a kind of awkward feeling, and she happens to be African American as well. And then she says, it might feel a little uncomfortable. You might feel a little uncomfortable, but it's not going to be bad. And then she went for the KY gel and the glove, and I'm thinking I'm getting really embarrassed and it's awkward. But she put the glove on, and she pulled it back and she snapped it loudly on purpose, going, now here's time to make it happen. And the snap kind of broke the ice, and I would say 20 seconds later it was done. Right. And I remember that I had built up this big old thing about it, and really when it's actually done, it really wasn't anything. It wasn't a big deal. So Dr. Ukola, you were saying that there are other factors that create fear in men for taking this PSA test.
Actually, the rectal exam.
The rectal.
The rectal exam, where somebody's going to have one finger in their rectum.
You're making me nervous. Just talk about that.
The men don't like it because of the sexual orientation aspect of it. They might be thinking that they don't think a man should have his finger in their private part, like their rectum. Then also, in the correctional system, some men are subjected to cavity search. And I don't think that's a pleasant experience when some other officer is trying to see if you've got some drugs hidden somewhere. So with those two things in their mind, they probably just feel that the rectal exam is not something that they like. But we try to explain to them that it's only one time a year, and it's only 30 seconds maximum, and all the doctor wants to feel, that's why I have this little thing here, he just wants to feel the texture of your prostate and to see whether there's any little pimple or swelling there that might mean that there could be something growing. Because sometimes the PSA could be below 4, but there is already something.
If you are a brother in this church and you're over 40 and you've never gotten tested, I want you to do that. You need to take responsibility for your health.
There seems to be this disconnect for whatever reason between the church in terms of spiritual health, which we emphasize, and physical health. Pastor Rasmus, tell me, why do you think that is?
I think prior to the Enlightenment, spirit and matter were together. They were one. Somewhere along the way, we began to separate science from our spiritual existence. And before we knew it, people began to believe that either if you were okay spiritually, then you were okay physically. And today, it's not very different. Today, there's an area of our demographic who believes that as long as I can pray, things will be okay. But what we're finding is it's just a need to look closer at our physical health and be more proactive.
What do you see as some of the challenges that we face as a Black church to encourage people to take care of themselves physically?
On the Pentecostal side, there was maybe an overemphasis on spirituality in that years ago, even my own home, we didn't have much regard for the doctors. Healing, laying on of hands, we believed God would do it, and we saw it exclusively through spiritual lenses. My father was known as a man of miracles and prayer and tremendous healings. Tradition of Oral Roberts, A.A. Allen, Amy McPherson, rich heritage. The problem with that is we did not recognize that God heals through other means, through herbs, through love, through physicians, through medical technology. And so I think that we are in an era where we need to marry afresh, at least for a particular dimension of the religious Black community. And so the evidence, the clear evidence of this cancer and our community speaks volumes about our inability, shouldn't say inability, our lack of commitment to joining the medical community and the spiritual community.
Awareness is so important that we get to our community and let them know the severity of this disease. That's what's really holding this disease as a silent killer, because the awareness is not being taken place, within the churches.
It's interesting you talk about that overemphasis on the spiritual at the exclusion of the physical. And I think you're absolutely right. The recognition that any healing is God's healing. And if we recognize that, then we welcome it from wherever it comes. This idea of I'm not going to say it because I don't want to speak it into existence, or if I ignore it, it's going to go away, is something that I think has plagued the church over the years. And especially when you're talking about the illnesses that we're fighting now.
And the bottom line with all of it is after you go and you get checked, he's still going to tell you have to change your diet. And so I'm just trying to focus on the diet. I really am. That's more important to me than for me to go there.
I noticed you said that your focus is more prevention as opposed.
It is.
Some of it's genetic. I don't care if you're a vegetarian or vegan, and no matter what you eat, if you're just sitting out there eating grass all day, you can still get ill.
So our producer just told me that they got a phone call that Horace, the guy that we're about to get on a plane to go interview, has just passed away. That's for real. This is a guy that was a vegan, was a mentor of holistic medicine, a pillar of the community. I felt good after the LA meeting, and I felt like, that now we're getting into the meat of what we're trying to do, and now it feels like it's like this whole thing is like a bad omen or something, just I never even met the guy. I mean, she talked to him on the phone. He was excited about sharing the story, and we knew it was serious and it was stage 4. But I don't even know why it's bothering me so much, because I don't even know the guy. But anyway, that's enough.
I want people to realize cancer can happen to anyone. And my dad is living proof. My dad didn't smoke. My dad didn't drink. He had a vegetarian lifestyle, so he was very healthy. He drank plenty of water. A lot of people don't stay completely hydrated the way that they need to be. So in every aspect of what he could do for himself, he did. But yet, this monster still caught up with him. His prostate cancer was very rapid. Within a year, it had took its full toll on him.
Why did he not take a prostate exam?
He did.
So from the age of 50 to 60, he didn't have another exam.
I don't know. He did
Right.
not. Mm-hmm.
And then when he got the symptoms, when he was he diagnosed instantly, or he just found out he had?
No, he was not diagnosed instantly. When he went to the doctors looked at his PSA scores, and he says, no, this is not real. And they did it 4 times.
Because they were so high, he didn't think they could be real?
They didn't think they were real. And
Do you
so,
remember what they were?
Oh, I think at the time they were like 4,000. Yeah, I think it was at 4,000. So they kept saying there was a mix-up or the lab work or something. It couldn't be real. After the biopsy, they found cancer cell there. And they said it was an aggressive form of cancer and everything.
How did you deal with the fact that he had stage 4 cancer, and that now he couldn't walk, and we didn't, and we don't know the future now.
He was pretty positive about it. Horace always said that he would walk again, and we were going to go back and eat this.
So he had faith.
He had strong faith.
He had strong faith.
There was not a doubt in his mind that he wasn't going to walk again. And if not, the scooter was okay. That wasn't going to stop him from doing what he wanted to do.
And also that his faith in God also let him know that it's going to be all right, or give him courage that he was going to walk
I would say his faith in God helped, as well as he just believed. He just believed that he could overcome this. He just believed. He had a choice in the situation, and he just believed.
You know, we pastor majority women in our congregations. We have not created a male-friendly environment, and we know prostate cancer is something that is eviscerating our community at almost a pandemic rate, simply because we don't get checked and we don't move forward. What would you say as a word of encouragement to pastors and or men in terms of taking responsibility for their health? What would you say to them today?
Last night, actually Thursday night, I did a Bible study, a very powerful Bible study. James looked at this idea of faith without works is dead. And it speaks to our responsibility in this dynamic. God has framed for us access, and faith is essential, but we have to do our part. And James seems to have been rather emphatic about making clear that you've got your part to play in this. And so this conversation has been very helpful to me and enlightening as it relates to what I need to do, what as a pastor I need to do, as a father, I have 2 sons, what I need to do. I have a precious wife, my responsibility to her as it relates to my health, what I need to do in my community, Black men and Mexican men, what I need to do as it relates to the welfare of my home, my congregation, and my community.
In a little bit, I get angry because it's like, we did everything right. We didn't fight. We had a beautiful relationship. We ate. We exercised. I mean.
Did you ever?
So I get mad.
Right. And when you get angry, do you think, why me? Why us?
I don't want to because Horace said not to. He just said because it is. I mean, to him, it was a situation, a learning situation. It was another way of giving back and how to help others and everything. And he said, there's a reason for this. There's a reason why.
Well, actually, I got angry for a different reason.
What'd you get angry for?
I got angry because when I heard them speak of him, and what a good man he was, and how he see, I'm not supposed to be the one crying, and how he had a vision, how he helped people, how he, when people like that pass, this world needs people like that. We need more people like that, and I don't understand why him.
What are the symptoms? That's a good question. And so for prostate cancer, there typically are no symptoms. Like other diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure, that's why we consider them all silent killers. In particular, like prostate cancer is something that by the time that you have symptoms, it's a disease that's already progressed or gone further than we want to, a point at which we want to identify it. For those men who have symptoms, they're at higher risk of having disease that's spread outside of the prostate.
Why do you
Why do you guys think that this subject matter is not spoken of? Why is it sort of taboo in the first place amongst our community?
I think a stigma's attached to the brothers from the standpoint that they hear about the way it's done, the test is done in the exam, and brothers, they ain't letting nobody mess with them back there, so their attitude is it ain't gonna happen. And I like to tell the brothers, I'd rather have that done than to be somebody sitting out there crying for me in about another 4 years. Right. So I think the reason for that is it's just a taboo in the neighborhood. But I think once you explain to them what it's all about, it'll change. The attitudes will change, and I think that education is important.
Now, the original members, okay, I can tell you, you wouldn't know, but the ones that made our records that I got famous with DJ Yeller, Dr. Dre, Pine Till, who was later replaced by Shakespeare, and myself. Okay. It's been a few wrecking crews prior to us blowing up, but the ones that really got famous were those were the original four.
And from there, how did it evolve to get to where it is now?
Well, we were promoters, DJs for the most part, and the streets started to change. We kind of followed the trends of the time. Originally, World Class Record Crew was heavily influenced by Prince, Morris Day at a time. So there's video footage of us doing the birds at Dudos, okay? Oh, you did it. I had my skinny tie the whole 9 yards. And when we started making our music, we went for the Prince pretty boy look, We had the Jerry curls and the eyeliner, and the whole one of us had on a lace glove, it wasn't me. One of us had on a lace glove and I had a long earring in. That was our look at that time. And we did very well with that look. And at some point in time, like so many trends, that trend started to fade and more of a street edge came in. Mm-hmm. And because I'm from a different era, I really wasn't prepared or wasn't willing to change in that street era. That's not my flavor. Mm-hmm. As a grown man, it's still not my flavor. Mm-hmm. And because I'm dealing with younger men, I'm 8 years older than Dre. They see in the streets from a different perspective. Okay. And they wanted to go with a different look. And we kind of caused a rift between us, okay? And they want to do something else. And I said, no, I don't want to do that.
So, Alonzo, we have the godfather of soul. We have the queen of soul. You the godfather of hip-hop.
No, West Coast hip-hop.
West Coast hip-hop. Okay, West Coast hip-hop. Now tell me how you got that name, that title.
As a young DJ, club owner by the time I was 21 years old, record label owner, and a club owner by the time I was 26 years old. Founder of the World Class Wrecking Crew, did so much in this area, Compton. I was kind of the person that developed the Compton music entertainment scene. Now it was one before me that focused on R&B and hip hop, but I'm the one that brought Curtis Blow to L.A., Run DMC to L.A., LL Cool J to L.A., and kind of really introduced West Coast and especially Compton to the East Coast rappers. But this room right here has been host to several different rap artists from back east, and then my club around the corner, Dudos, and then Skateland. Between those three venues, it wasn't not many people who are prominent today didn't come to one of those two venues, including New Edition. So these are the kind of things, the kind of groundbreaking things that I did back in the day that nobody else can take credit for. It's undisputable.
But you yourself found out that you had prostate cancer.
Yes, I did.
So how did you find out this in the first place?
I'm blessed. I have health insurance, and I go to the doctor on a regular basis. And for 2 years, the doctor kept saying, your prostate's a little bit enlarged. We're going to watch it. We're going to watch it. We're going to watch it. And I started going to the restroom a lot. And one of my last tests, my last exam, they said, okay, go see a urologist. So they gave me a few.
Now, how old were you?
I was about 53 at the time.
Okay, so you didn't get tested until you were 53?
Well, they had been checking me, but they kept telling me, it was enlarged. Okay. For the most part, it was okay. All of a sudden, around my 50th birthday, he started saying, your prostate's a little bit enlarged. We're going to watch it. We're going to keep an eye on it,
How old were you when you first got tested?
About 49, 50.
Okay, right around that time.
Yeah. And it was cool for a while.
Tell me exactly when you got the information that you had prostate cancer.
After I went to the urologist and they did a biopsy, and he gave me the bad news. They found cancer in 2 parts of my prostate.
Okay, so had you had an idea about it because of the symptoms, or
Nah, man, that was that thing I thought about.
There's 2 processes that could that goes on, or potentially could go on in the prostate. This is just a little diagram of the bladder, and that you see up here. And here's the prostate, and here's the urinary sphincter that gives you urinary control. So starting at the age of 30 or so, the prostate will start growing in a benign fashion. And as you can see, it goes through the urinary tract or the urethra. So if you think of my fist as the prostate, not only does it grow, but it also starts strangulating the urinary flow. So the growth of the prostate in a benign fashion is what we call the transition zone right around the urethra. That's when you have the decreased urinary flow, urinary frequency, and there's other causes, but waking up at night more often.
Last thing I thought about, they gave me Flomax and all kind of other stuff. Thought it might have been a urinary tract infection because I started going to the restroom a lot. Okay, more than normal. Okay, and we were going to check it out. Then we sent to the urologist. The urologist gave me a bunch of pills to try and make sure it wasn't a urinary tract infection, and it still kept happening. And then that's when they did the biopsy, and that probably was the worst part of the whole situation. No drugs, I'm sober, and I'm on the table, and he's going through the back door, Doc, and this ain't nothing nice. It ain't nothing nice, okay?
So what stage did he tell you that you were at?
I was stage 1, man. Stage 1 and 2. I had 15% on one side and 10 in the other. And I just decided it wasn't where one thing I know about cancer, if you try to treat it, sometimes they get upset and go other places. So I said, just take the I don't need it. I had a vasectomy years ago, so I'm done making babies. And I don't need it. And as long as everything work, we can make it happen. So I just had to remove it.
It changes, so you see it growing here.
Yes.
That's mild.
That's mild, and then this is just severe growing.
Severe growing.
Now, the model here is just to serve a purpose of showing the diagram, but typically the prostate for benign prostatic hyperplasia is around the urinary tract, so it causes urinary symptoms. Now, prostate cancer, this is showing cancer that's probably maybe locally invasive, but they usually occur in what we call the peripheral zone, which is on the outside. So if you have prostate cancer that's growing on the outside, it will not strangulate your urinary stream, and it will not cause any symptoms.
Right.
So this is
not have any symptoms, and it's right.
Yes. And then this is the reason why a prostate exam is very important, because on the prostate exam, the outside of the prostate, on the backside of the prostate, is where you're palpating, and that's where the cancer can be detected.
Once you find out you got prostate cancer, did you have to have any surgeries or any?
I've had just about every treatment that a person with prostate cancer can have, except for the experimental trials and clinical trials. I've had the surgery, which was an old-fashioned open cut wound prostatectomy. Had radiation, 7.5 weeks of high-dose radiation. Had the penile implant, hormone therapy, the Garelix and Lupron, which is a form of chemo drug. Been there, had it. And then on top of all of that, insomnia crept in, and the severe depression. I had severe depression that crept in where my moods were just intolerable. And but I never had a single symptom, and to this day, never have a single symptom of the prostate cancer itself. It's all the side effects of everything of all the treatments.
This idea of prostate cancer in the midst of our spiritual emphasis, our message, a lot of times people think as church leaders we should be exempted from it. It shouldn't come in contact with us or anywhere within our concentric circle of contact. Do either one of you know anybody, friends, family members who have had or have prostate cancer?
2 friends diagnosed this year. One actually had surgery and removal of the prostate. The other went through treatment. And, for one of my friends, the thought of impotence was a real challenge. And then ultimately experiencing a different feeling in and around sexual energy. And I think in the back of every man's mind is the thought of the plumbing no longer working the same.
There is something very natural, very wholesome about sexuality and a man's desire for a woman. I think if God gave us anything, that's pure. And when you speak of tainting that, this disease affecting that, then it does do something to the mind, to the heart of a real red-blooded man who has always enjoyed that part of his life. I think that there's something to be said for how you're affected by the possibility of not having that kind of access.
Right. What are the complications after the surgery?
Incontinence, really tough incontinence, stress incontinence. If you get excited or angry or whatever, it can cause severe incontinence, leakage. So you've got to have pads on a regular basis. Impotence, loss of libido, hot flashes, weight gain, sleepless nights. Everything comes as a result of some of the treatment, and you never know when it's going to strike.
Tell me how it was you walking in there, finding out information about your prostate cancer. You've been getting bad news every time you walk in there, and you're often walking in there by yourself.
Yeah, it was and it was tough times, and when my wife and I were going through this difficult part of the marriage, and I pretty much shut down from everybody because I wasn't talking to anybody anymore. And so I would have these monthly appointments. So I would have to go, and my wife was going with me early on, and of course my mother was going through cancer at the same time, and I was taking her. And then 2 days later I was going, and because of the nature of what I was going through, you didn't want to just take anybody because you often dropping your clothes and digital rectal exam and checking your scrotum and it was getting shots and stuff and in your stomach, in your rear, and so a lot of times I went by myself. I was in pain and disoriented, sad, depressed, but I preferred driving, crying without other people in the car with me. And man, I look back on that 2.5 years, man, and I think about all of those trips to the doctor by myself, and I would always walk in and see these men sitting there with their wives, and that used to kill me, man. It would kill me. And I would always go in by myself, and I'd sit down, and I'd always be the youngest man in the lobby.
Financially, you said this thing took a real toll financially.
Completely out.
Well.
Took us completely out. Our house is in foreclosure.
Home is in foreclosure.
We're losing the home.
You're losing the home.
Mm-hmm.
Losing the home.
Mm-hmm.
Lost your wife. You've lost your health. How are you still coping?
Son and daughter, man.
This is the house that they grew up in.
10 years. And I'm living for them, man. And living for me too, but living for them, giving them all I got.
I don't know, there's certain things that you might not mind sharing with people, but this is so personal. It made me feel like maybe I was what's the word, invading his privacy. But that's what this is about. This is about talking about those things that are uncomfortable in our society right now, and hopefully by talking about them, having those conversations, they will become less uncomfortable.
So, Thomas, great seeing you again and follow up.
Same here.
Just to review your history, March of this year, we did a repeat biopsy. We took some additional biopsies. The first time we took 16, the second time we took 18 cores. And out of that, only 1 out of 18 cores showed up prostate cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And also the prostate cancer was a medium grade. They graded with a Gleason score, and yours was a Gleason score 3 + 3 = 6, out of the worst being 10.
The Gleason score is a numerical score given to prostate cancer based on how the cells look under a microscope. The Gleason score also provides your doctor with information on how likely the prostate cancer is to grow and spread.
And what we know about a Gleason score 6 is that it's a slow to medium grade. And we gave you the option at that time in March. And your options, considering your age, you're 62 now.
Mm-hmm.
I thought 2 good options were to watch this, or what we call active surveillance, where we'll monitor your examinations and do PSAs. Mm-hmm. And also, in the near future, we would probably recommend another biopsy just to make sure that the cancer is not growing.
Had anyone spoken to you about prostate cancer before you were diagnosed?
No.
So you hadn't had the conversation about prostate cancer in particular before you actually got diagnosed?
That is correct. But when people would say prostate, I actually never gave it any thought. Prostate, what's that?
Yes, something in my shoulder.
Yeah,
huh?
pretty much. I really didn't think about that. Although I had heard that you make sure you get your physical so that to make sure your prostate is okay. And really, I knew it was somewhere down there, but not really knowing where or what because it didn't pertain to me.
We're doing a documentary on prostate cancer called The Silent Killer. I was wondering if you knew where your prostate was.
I know where it's located.
Do you know where your prostate is?
Yes. My prostate was?
Yeah, where your prostate at?
Where the prostate is?
Uh-huh.
Prostate.
Do you know where your prostate is? Do you know where your prostate is? Yeah.
I have no clue.
I believe so.
Do I know where it is?
Right. I would hope so. How about you, my man?
I can point around somewhere, right? It's somewhere around.
It's somewhere around.
Yeah, it's kind of somewhere inside there, deep up your butthole. That's your butt, eh?
Near your bladder?
Near your bladder? I'll take that as a no. Behind me?
Somewhere around
in the groin area. Okay.
Yeah, I would say about 25 to 30% of my patients with diagnosis of prostate cancer don't know where the prostate lives. And I would say about 50% of the patients don't know what the function of the prostate is. Prostate is part of the reproductive organ. It produces the fluid to keep the sperm healthy. So when a man ejaculates with an orgasm, 90 to 95% of the volume is from the prostate. Mm-hmm. So after, for example, prostate cancer surgery, a gentleman will be able to have an orgasm, but nothing would come out. But the sensation would be the same.
It's like I'm not hearing enough about what's causing it. So I don't hear cause being.
Well, they kind of it's diet, stress. They said high dairy products and meat, red meat.
It's about, like you said, it's about the values. We value other things more than our health, perhaps. And if we start addressing, our diets and our health, which is really the core of our problems in general when it comes to our health. Mm-hmm. The African American diet in general is bad in comparison to other cultures.
Right.
It's very, very bad. And that has a historical, background to it as well. Right. So by addressing it from, also saying we need to change our diets, and how we're living.
Our lifestyle.
Is a big problem, which in addition to getting checked out, but that's ultimately what you're going to come down to anyway when you want to solve the problem.
Right.
You do got to get checked, but if you want to solve the problem, we got to change the way we live.
How do you feel about not going to take this test? Are you nervous? Are you looking forward to it? What?
And I look forward to going and seeing the people at the doctor's office, but this is my first treatment since last June, and they'll try to give me an injection that will last a year. I'm losing my insurance at the end of this month, and so I've got to make a decision how long do I want this to last me for right now until Medicaid or Medicare kicks in. But I'll lose Blue Cross Blue Shield and my choice of physicians.
I myself have quite a bit of family that's in poverty, and realistically speaking, they don't have health insurance. So, you know what I mean? And at the same time, it's like, one of the things is, like, I wonder, it's like how many minorities out there that do not have health insurance. So it's kind of like, okay, I feel you in the back of my mind, like, yeah, man, I got to survive or whatever. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, if I got to pay X amount of dollars just to go get this examination for them to tell me I don't have something or I may have something, I don't know. It's kind of a catch-22.
A lot of people, they don't have insurance, and that's why I like to go every year, but I don't have insurance. It doesn't cover my expenses. That's why I don't go.
The financial impact of a cancer diagnosis is often a major source of stress and anxiety for those diagnosed and their families. Free and low-cost local and national resources are available to help with many cancer-related costs, including the cost of medication, transportation, and even legal needs.
Cool. Okay, so you like it? I'm at 0.07, didn't have to get a shot, and I had my clean draws and everything. So, yeah, I didn't hear. She had to get a shot, man. It's the first time I've ever walked out of here and got good news in 3 years.
So my research focuses on prostate cancers, which are derived from cells that line glands within the prostate. And so what we want to do is understand how we can better treat those types of cancers. And so in vitro, which means in cell culture dishes, we look at how various compounds affect cancer growth. And in vivo, we do preclinical studies looking at how various animal models of prostate cancer respond to the drugs that we're interested in.
Okay. All right, what else can you tell us about your research? You find it, do you find it fascinating, or do you just find it necessary?
I find it both fascinating and necessary. Fascinating because we're finding out new information about how prostate cancers function, what things required for prostate cancer growth, how we can control growth of prostate cancers by using various drugs that interact with these nuclear receptors that control the function of the cell. But also I find it necessary because, again, prostate cancer is one of the leading causes of cancer death in the United States, and it disproportionately affects men of African American descent. And until we better understand the disease, we can't really figure out how to treat patients who have this disease and who suffer from that malady. And so I find it necessary for us to do that study because unless we have a better understanding, we can't find a better cure for prostate cancer.
How do you think it's affected your life going through that experience?
At first, man, it affected me mentally, dude, because, when homie ain't working, because, you go down for a while. I mean, literally down for a while. And it wasn't working. I thought my sex life was over with, dude. I thought I was done, okay? And doctor told me, he gave me a prescription for Cialis. He says, your job now is to treat just like any other muscle, work it as much as possible. So treatment was very good. The therapy was great. Getting back on the saddle was great, doc. But it still took a while. They tell you 90 days, maybe 120 days. More like 6 months.
Okay.
More like 6 months.
So Alonzo, somebody who's been in the business of hip hop for over 30 years. You got a lot of respect now. You got clout. You've earned this clout. You got young people looking up to you. How important do you think it is for these people to understand that this conversation should be had?
This conversation should be had in regards to prostate cancer, blood pressure, diabetes, and various other diseases, because these youngsters nowadays, they living so hard, they don't think about their health. And you listen to some of these rap records, you see some of the videos, all they doing is popping bottles, smoking, whatever the case may be. Think about all the rap artists who have died from natural causes. That's really too young to be dying from these natural causes. One of my favorite cats, Nate Dogg, died from a stroke, 42 years old. I mean, when you talking about, these guys, they patted themselves off of living hard lives, okay? I mean, they're proud. Lil Wayne has seizures, okay? But he talks about living, how hard he's living, what all he's doing. I mean, these guys have to understand that money, you cannot forego your health in the pursuit of wealth, because you will forego your wealth in the pursuit of health.
Y'all hear that?
So as a spouse, Karen, what would you say to other women if they found out that their other had been diagnosed with prostate cancer? What advice have you to offer them?
I believe that knowledge is powerful, and so they need to check out what it really means and what stage their spouse is in, what kind of conditions they have to meet, and then to go for it and to fight the battle. It's not going to do you any good to stew about it or worry about it. Right. You need to take some kind of action so that you are moving. And when you move, then your body is in a positive mode and can fight back.
Right. Now, you were fortunate enough to find out that you had first stage.
Mm-hmm.
How has it changed your lifestyle?
Well, I think there are a lot of benefits. We've begun to do more exercise without the excuses. And of course, our food habits are changing, and that's all good. And less stress. We're working on following some of the guidelines from the medical, which Thomas mentioned, which was the food supplements that match what he needs. And then the exercise, the getting enough rest. And the doctors also suggest sex 3 times a week.
Really?
As a healthy thing for the prostate.
Write that down.
I think it was minimum.
A minimum, that's right. Have to put that down. Minimum. Okay.
How do you get, say for instance, a patient like Thomas who comes in here and maybe he's reluctant, not Thomas per se, but someone comes in here and you tell them, well, we're going to watch and wait. How do you get them to come back? How do you know they're not just going to go, well, you know what, I can watch and wait without coming back? How often should they come back, and how do you encourage them to come back?
A really good question. That has not been a problem for me because when you tell gentlemen that they have prostate cancer, there's no denial there. Getting to a urologist to get that biopsy prior to that, I think you could deny yourself that I'm not at risk, so you could kind of not follow up. But once you have a tissue diagnosis saying that you have prostate cancer, those men are motivated because after you've counseled them, they know that it may be clinically significant. It does need to be observed and watched. So I think the problem is with a patient seeing a primary care physician and a primary care physician making that recommendation, and that patient being very reluctant because they don't want to know. But once they know, they're very motivated.
Once I got past of saying, okay, I have it, what do I need to do to fight the enemy? Because now it's real. And I have to, and they need to know this is what Dad has. And we must move forward as a unit, as a family, regardless of what happens. And finding out that how it runs rampant through people of color, swifter than other races. If it goes bad, meaning that it blows out of proportion, and I do die from it, that we did fight it to the end, rather than sitting around waiting for it to happen.
Have you spent much time thinking about that alternative, that if it had or if it does?
Yes, and we've gotten things in order in case that does happen. Wills and everything that needs to be in case that does happen. And those are even funeral arrangements, mortuary, all that's been pretty much taken care of. Any event and exactly where I would be buried.
Have you cried?
I haven't done that. It has. I've been very sad. I haven't cried. To cry, it has brought tears to my eyes to think what I'll miss. To think that how I'll leave her, and what my kid and my children, and what I haven't done, and what I need to do. So that's why I have a real sense of urgency to move forward in whatever I'm going to do it today, because the time for me it's a luxury. I look at it. So you live every day as if it's your last.
Karen,
Yes.
have you cried?
Mm-hmm.
Have you contemplated the worst?
One of the things we had done was take care of our financial things in the past years. In the last 2 years, the trust and insurances and so on. So I didn't have any fear of that responsibility or that component. But to say that I would lose Thomas, that's pretty serious.
Has this moved you any further toward the idea of having an exam, or are you feel like, I got this?
I'm not ready to get the exam.
I kind of felt like I failed, that I mean, yeah, I felt like I I walked away wondering maybe I could have said something differently. Maybe I could have asked other questions. I don't know. But everybody makes their own choices. And something like this, I want to be betting 1,000, man. I want everybody to convert. But this is real life, man. This is.
What would you say to a brother who said, it's not for me?
Well, first of all, I'm going to ask him, do you have a family? Do you have kids? I got grandkids, dude. I never had a grandfather. I never knew my mom's father. I met him when I was a kid, don't remember him. Never knew my dad's father. My function right now is to be a granddaddy, man. Okay? I got 4 grandkids, okay? And I love my grandkids. I love my kids. But my grandkids, that's a different kind of thing. If you got grandkids, you understand that. So I would tell them, man, if you had anybody that you care about, that you love, you do it. It ain't about you. It ain't about you right now. It's about them. Okay? Now, if you don't care, I can't help you. But I care.
Don't let this be your daughter, your sister, your mother, or any loved one sitting in front telling you how much they miss you because you're gone, because it was just your lack of wanting to go get a test. And that test could be that very test that saved your life. Don't be selfish.
Why did you want to tell this story?
when God gave it to me, He gave it to the right person. And, you know, I'm living for my kids right now. Maybe it'd be different if I was still married. Maybe it'd be different if I was in a relationship right now. But yeah, no, there's nothing, it's not worth hiding because I'm coming out of this thing. And if I can come out of this thing with all that I've been through and still live to see another day and hope for a better day, then I think that any brother who is suspicious of having prostate cancer or any cancer for that matter needs to know that it's bad at the beginning, but man, medical science is so advanced now that they can help you, they can treat you. And to stay away is the worst thing you can do, whether you're male, female. To stay away and think what you don't know won't hurt you is about as fallacious as it gets. And not only that, but it's forsaking those that you love.
There is a tremendous need for these kinds of health initiatives. And while other nonprofit organizations are trying to do things, the church must be at the forefront. We've got to be the vanguard. We've got to represent the first line of defense. And if that's going to happen, the pastor's got to take the lead.
I got a 93 Volvo. Mel knows that. It keeps rolling. But I know every so many miles, I'm going to get a tune-up, or I'm going to get the oil change, or he might say something needs to be fixed. I might say, well, I can wait on that. But the fact is, how many of you got a car that's almost 20 years old that's still rolling? And that's with my body, too. I'm going to go and get it checked out before I know something's wrong. So if they give me a diagnosis, then I can determine what I want to do with it, but I need to know.
But in this book that I was reading, one of the things it said, it was talking about how we will go to the gym and we'll put all this time to look right outside. You know, we'll go to the barber to look right outside. We'll cut our stuff so we look right outside, but we're not focusing on what's happening inside, and that's what's going to kill you.
Why did you feel the need to become an advocate?
You know, when they told me I had prostate cancer, they give you a stack of books, like you're going to school. You learn all about prostate cancer. They tell you all the different symptoms: denial, rejection, acceptance. And where I travel, man, there's a bunch of guys that hang on bus stops, whatever. And I passed by one day, and I said, "Why me? Why me? Why Lonzo? You know, I got grandkids. I'm a good guy. I go to church. I do all the good stuff. Why me?" And then a few days later, I'm sitting in my chair feeling sorry for myself. Mm-hmm. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. If they had it, nobody might not care. But because you are all these things to different people, somebody may listen to you. And I after that, I embraced it. And every time I hit the stage at the club, man, for like 2 or 3 years, it's still even now, I tell fellas, hey, man, go get checked, dude, because you don't know, man. I had one buddy, it was too late for him. He's done. He's done with sex forever, okay? Other buddies who I told about prostate cancer got checked. They were relieved because they found themselves going to the restroom a lot. It was just a urinary tract infection. Mm-hmm. Other guys, I didn't have nothing. A couple of guys who had it were like, man, I'm so glad somebody else talking about this. Now, we became buddies because we both were dealing with it, and he chose a different route of treatment than I did. Another buddy of mine who was on my Facebook page, man, and we're not really tight. We know each other. I saw him in a restaurant one day. He says, man, I've been looking for you. I've been to hit you up. For what, man? You saved my life. For what? How you figure? I don't remember pulling you out no car, no burning building, nothing like that, pushing from no bullets. He said, no, man. When you start talking about prostate cancer on your Facebook page, I wouldn't got checked. I didn't have prostate cancer. I had colon cancer. And if you hadn't said nothing about it, dude, I never would have known anything about it. So that right there was motivation for me to keep talking about it. And I could tell some more brothers, hey, man, go get checked. At least know that you're okay.
I'm a good researcher. Mm-hmm. So I am going to research it after today. Mm-hmm. I am going to be tested. I'm educated enough to know that.
My boy.
Yeah. See that? Crazy. I can be, militant and all that, but I'm just saying, I don't trust that.
If nothing else, just to hear you say that, I feel like my job is done. You see that? You see what I did, y'all?
I'm going to do it.
My job is done. There are people that have watched this video
this documentary and will say, I'm still not buying it. I don't want to take the test. I'll find some other way, or my faith will help me, or I'll just make sure I eat right. What would you say to those people?
They're really selfish. They don't have the right to do that to their loved ones. They need to do and take action. And if you're not doing or taking action, then you're being selfish. You're putting all the attention on yourself, and you're not thinking of your loved ones.
Wow. That's the reality of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Those people who say, I don't need to, I don't have to, somebody else will take care of me, are being selfish.
So ignorance isn't bliss.
But it's absolutely the opposite.
But I just say if you're into your health and you have family, you have kids, you have people that love you, if you really love them, then you'll go get tested.
Okay, if you really love them, then you would go get tested.
Mm-hmm. It's selfish not to. Don't you think?
I've learned so much doing this documentary. I've learned that having someone that cares about you, that loves you, standing by you when you're dealing with something like cancer, is so much more powerful than standing by yourself. That something so simple as an examination can be the difference between life and death. So today, I'm going to be part of the solution. Today, I vow to end the silence.
Can you turn the camera over here a little bit? I want you to see. This is real. This is real stuff we're talking about. This is his daughter, and this is real. It affects people, and it doesn't. It's not just that person. And as you said, Karen, when you don't do the responsible thing, that's a selfish act that you've decided to take. Because so many people are affected by that one person. And this document is about letting people know that, and this is real. You hear the sniffing, that's someone off camera, that's his daughter, that's affected by the question, by even posing that question to you, that if you were not to make it through this. I'd like to thank you so much for your time.
Welcome.
Mm.